Usually, when we think about the ground beneath our feet, we think of it in these strictly utilitarian terms.
Right, like it's just real estate.
Exactly. It's territory, mapped out by city planners, or just a surface to be paved over, a commodity to be bought and sold. And even in our most poetic moments, we really just see the earth as the stage where the actual drama of human life takes place.
Yeah, it just sits there completely passive and unmoving, kind of waiting for us to do something with it.
But today, we are going on a deep dive that is designed to fundamentally rewire how you, the listener, look at that ground. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources for this one.
We've got translated indigenous chant texts, historical analyses of Polynesian culture, and some really dense contemporary essays on Hawaiian cosmology.
And our focus for all of this is the Hawaiian figure of Papahānaumoku, the Earth Mother. The mission of this deep dive is to shift your perspective entirely. We are going to explore a worldview where the Earth is not, a passive resource or a static stage.
Right, it's an active, living, breathing family member.
Yes. And it's a profound ontological shift. When you are steeped in a modern, fast-paced framework, land is just property. But the perspective offered by these sources provides a radical, beautiful alternative that completely restructures the human relationship with the natural world.
It moves it completely from extraction to kinship.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting at the very foundation of this philosophy. To understand the worldview, the sources point us directly to the linguistics of her name.
Which is so important here.
It is. Papahānaumoku isn't just a mythological title. It functions almost like a scientific description of reality.
Yeah, the linguistic breakdown in the text is incredibly revealing. You have papa, which refers to a flat surface, a foundation, or the stratum beneath us.
Right.
Then you have hanau, which means to give birth or to bring forth. And finally, moku, which means an island, a district, or basically that which is cut and separated from the whole.
So you put that all together, and her name literally means she who gives birth to islands. The sources emphasize a stark contrast here. And I think the best way to look at this is through an analogy. In many Western cosmological traditions, creation is framed like a sculptor molding clay.
Right. The creator is the active agent, and the clay is just raw, dead material.
Yeah. And the finished sculpture is a distinct object. But in the Hawaiian concept, the earth is not a sculptor making an object. The earth is a mother giving birth to kin. So, if the islands aren't created objects, how does this change the ethical relationship humans have with the environment?
What's fascinating here is the sheer ethical weight of that distinction, because the islanders are offspring, they are family.
The relatives.
Yes. The earth is not a passive substrate upon which things happen. She is a generative mother whose actual body forms the bounded land. You are not living on a territory.
You're living on a relative.
You are living on an elder sibling. I mean, an object like a piece of clay can be exploited, sold, or destroyed without moral consequence.
Because it's just clay.
Right. But you have mutual, deeply ingrained obligations to kin. And this understanding really sets the stage for centuries of Hawaiian social structure, which is entirely built on genealogy rather than property rights.
That just reframes everything about how we interact with our environment. And if we have a mother giving birth to the islands, we naturally have to look at the other half of that equation. Like, who is she partnering with, and how do they fit into the broader mechanics of the universe?
Right, you need the other half. And the texts introduce Wakia as her counterpart. Wakia is the Sky Father.
Okay.
His name translates to the broad expanse, or the wide open space. He and Papahānaumoku form the fundamental cosmological dyad.
The core pair.
Exactly. You have form and space, the generative foundation, and the vast expanse. And it takes the interaction of these two massive forces to produce the islands.
And our sources actually situate this dyad within a much larger Polynesian context, right? Papahānaumoku has cognates all across the Pacific, and the text specifically highlights Papatunuku in the Maori tradition.
Yes, the dynamic between the Maori Earth Mother and their Sky Father, Ranginui, gives us a very visceral understanding of this relationship.
It's a really intense image. The narrative describes them locked in this incredibly tight, intimate embrace at the very beginning of time.
Right. They were so close that their children, the Sky Children, were completely trapped in the darkness between their bodies.
Just crushed in the middle.
Yeah. So to create space and light for life to flourish, the children had to physically force their parents apart.
Which is such a powerful narrative about the necessity of separation. Form and space must be divided for the world to exist. But the text notes that the separation leaves a permanent emotional scar on the cosmos. Papahānaumoku continues to mourn the forced separation from her partner.
And the physical environment reflects that mourning. The census mentioned that the morning mists rising from the valleys aren't just, atmospheric phenomena.
Right, they're not just weather.
No, they're interpreted as her literal sighs of grief, reaching up toward the Sky Father.
Wow. It perfectly illustrates how cosmological concepts map directly onto the lived environment. You aren't just observing the water cycle, you are witnessing the ongoing emotional reality of the cosmos.
It's all connected.
Which brings us to a crucial point about the timeline of this universe. We've established Earth and sky, but the sources dive deeply into a chant called the Kumulipo.
The Kumulipo is incredible. It's this massive, multi-generational creation chant that serves as a highly detailed cosmogony.
Yeah, what struck me is how it traces life back to primordial darkness and heat. It moves through these successive eras, It starts with basic marine life, then moves to plant life, then land creatures, and eventually human beings. But wait, so Wakia and Papahānaumoku didn't just snap their fingers and make the universe out of nothing?
No, and that is a critical distinction the sources make. When we hear Sky Father and Earth Mother, it is very easy to project a Western creator deity concept onto them.
Like a being standing in a void, initiating everything from scratch.
Exactly, but the Hawaiian origin story is not ex nihilo, which means out of nothing. Papahānaumoku and Wakia are not the absolute beginning of the universe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are critical nodes in an already ancient continuum.
So they enter a universe that has already been evolving for eras. Because the Kumulipo describes slime and sea urchins long before it describes the gods we are talking about.
Right. The Kumulipo functions as this brilliant piece of oral architecture that reflects an acute observation of the natural world. It describes what the sources call a web of becoming.
A web of becoming, I like that.
Yeah. The chant pairs marine life with land flora, recognizing an evolutionary continuum where one thing slowly emerges from another. This is a deeply relational and genealogical worldview, not a creationist one. Origin isn't a singular magical event, it is an unbroken, ongoing lineage.
So we have this vast ancient biological continuum, but the sources detail a very specific and frankly quite messy family drama that actually brings human beings into this web.
It definitely gets messy. It moves from the macro scale of cosmic eras down to a highly personal narrative involving betrayal.
Yeah, the transition from the cosmic to the human is driven by a very specific myth cycle. In this tradition, Wakia, the Sky Father, engages in a transgressive union with his own daughter, Hohushukalani.
And Papahānaumoku discovers this betrayal.
Right, and the chant traditions don't shy away from the emotional fallout of that at all. They record the marital rupture, the jealousy, and the expulsion with intense detail. It's a profound fracturing of that original dyad.
And from that fractured dynamic, we get the births that directly lead to humanity. The first child born from Wakia and his daughter is described as malformed, a stillborn entity.
Which is tragic, but then what happens?
Well, they plant this child in the earth in the literal body of Papahānaumoku. And from that planted child grows the first kalo plant, which is taro, the foundational staple crop of the Hawaiian diet.
And then a second union occurs between Wakia and the daughter. And this union produces a healthy child named Holoa, which translates to long breath or eternal life. And Holoa is the first true human ancestor of the Ali, the chiefly lineages of Hawaii. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because of the sequence of these births.
The sequence is everything.
Right. Think about mapping out your family tree. You trace the branches up past your parents, your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. In this lineage, right there at the foundational branch of humanity, is a root vegetable.
Exactly.
The taro plant is structurally and literally the older sibling to humanity.
This raises an important question. How do we define kinship in a modern context versus this traditional framework? In Western models, humanity is entirely separate from the ecosystem, right?
Yeah, we sit at the top of a pyramid, managing the resources below us.
But the Hawaiian people trace their ancestry through a horizontal web. That web includes the taro plant that feeds them, the earth mother that nourishes the plant, and the paradoxical, transgressive actions of the Sky Father that made human birth possible.
So humanity is inextricably linked to the food it eats and the dirt that food grows in.
Because they share the exact same parents.
It is an incredible way to cement a society's relationship with its food source and its environment. But this brings us to a massive historical collision.
A very painful one.
Yeah. If the earth is your mother and the taro is your elder brother, How does a society operating on that logic interact with external forces that view land as a commodity? The sources spend a lot of time on the 19th century, specifically the Mahele period, to illustrate this conflict.
They do. The sources outline an intense ontological collision, and ontology deals with the very nature of being. In the Hawaiian worldview, there is a concept called loha uina, meaning love of the land.
Love of the land, yeah.
The texts make it explicitly clear that this is not an allegory. Papahānaumoku's relationship to the land isn't symbolic. She is the land. Her physical body is the foundation of the islands.
So to say you love the land isn't saying, you enjoy a nice view of the mountains or something.
Yes.
It is expressing a deep, reciprocal, familial love for an elder kin who provides for you.
And that reciprocal relationship defined traditional Hawaiian governance. Leadership under an ally, or chief, was a custodial relationship. Authority didn't stem from holding a property deed. It stemmed from genealogical proximity to the Earth Mother.
They were the closest relatives.
Exactly. The chief was recognized as the closest living descendant to the source, and their role was to steward the land, maintaining the balance of the extended family, which included the rivers, the soil, and the taro.
That makes the events of the 1848 Mahala incredibly jarring. The sources detail how traditional communal land tenure was restructured to accommodate private, Western-style land ownership. But reading this through the lens of Papahānaumoku, it's clear this wasn't just a shift in economic policy. How did this ontological clash actually play out when the concept of owning real estate was enforced?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see two entirely incompatible realities trying to occupy the exact same space. The encroaching Western system is rooted in Roman law concepts of private property, where land is a static commodity. It can be measured, divided by fences, assigned a monetary value, and completely alienated from the people who live on it.
You draw a line, hand over currency, and it belongs to you to exploit as you see fit.
But if your entire society is built on the understanding that the land is your grandmother, introducing a system that allows you to buy, sell, or permanently sever your relationship with her is catastrophic.
I can't even imagine.
The sources emphasize that the land dispossession during the Mahele wasn't merely an economic displacement. In the Hawaiian theological and ontological framework, transforming the land into a tradable commodity was a desecration of the mother's body.
Wow. And the sources also point out that this perspective isn't relegated to history. Modern sovereignty movements in Hawaii consistently draw on the figure of Papahānaumoku to articulate what is at stake today. And just to be clear for you listening, the texts present this not as us taking a side in a modern political debate, but they present it as a consistent theological argument that these movements are making.
Right, it's about understanding their underlying logic.
Exactly. To care for the land is to honor the mother, and to degrade or sell it is an ongoing assault on that familial bond.
The political realities are obviously very complex, but the ontological foundation the sources describe remains steady. The land cannot be a resource if it is a relative.
As we look at how this worldview persists, the sources delve into how this feminine force, the mother, continues to adapt and manifest in the physical world. It's not just the story of a mother who gave birth in the ancient past and then faded away.
No, she's very much still active.
However, the text does acknowledge an interesting narrative layering in the myth we discussed earlier.
Yes, historians looking at the chant traditions note a repositioning of masculine and feminine power. In the story of Wakia and his daughter, the male Skyfather is positioned as the active, creative agent who initiates the lineage of the taro and the human.
And Papahānaumoku is momentarily sidelined as the aggrieved, betrayed spouse.
Right, it reflects a bit of a historical, patriarchal shift.
But the text is very careful to argue that even when she appears sidelined by that shift in the plot, she remains the absolute substrate. She is the fundamental condition of possibility. Wakia's actions have no context without her.
Absolutely none.
I mean, the stillborn child cannot grow into the taro unless it is planted in her soil. The entire drama requires her physical body as the arena.
She is the literal and metaphorical ground of being, and the sources highlight that her creative agency did not end in the mythological past. It is actively visible today, most notably through figures like Pele.
Ah, yes. Pele, the volcano goddess, is arguably the most globally recognized Hawaiian deity. From an outside perspective, a volcano is purely a destructive force. It's a natural disaster that burns forests and destroys homes.
But within this ontological framework, Pele is not destroying the Earth Mother, she is an extension of her. Volcanic eruptions are a different expression of the exact same generative force that birthed the islands in the first place.
So she's making more earth.
Exactly. Pele is actively birthing new land at the volatile frontier. She is expanding the physical body of Papahānaumoku. It is creation happening in real time.
That completely reframes lava from a hazard into a highly active form of biological expansion.
It really does.
But there's another goddess connected to the Earth Mother in these sources that really challenges modern sensibilities, and that is Haumea.
Yes, Haumea is a profoundly complex figure. She is the goddess of childbirth, regeneration, and politics. The texts suggest that she is either an aspect of Papahānaumoku herself or a specialized form she takes to interact with the world.
The texts describe Haumea as a shapeshifter who constantly renews her youth. She appears in every generation, often under a new name, to continue the work of generation. But there's a specific detail that I have to push back on.
Oh, the marriage aspect.
Yes. The source states that Haumea gives birth to children, and then later, in her renewed useful form, she takes those descendants as her husbands to produce the next generation. From a modern literal standpoint, that sounds like a deeply disturbing taboo. How are we supposed to interpret that narrative?
It is entirely understandable to have that reaction if you apply human sociological taboos to cosmological forces.
Right.
But the source material provides a completely different logic for this. This narrative is not a literal endorsement of human incest. It is a metaphorical representation of the fundamental law of ecological regeneration.
Okay, so how does that ecological mapping work?
Well, think about the mechanics of the natural world. The earth generates life, a tree grows from the soil. Eventually, that tree dies, decomposes, and is absorbed back into the exact same soil that gave birth to it.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. Then the earth uses the nutrients of its own offspring to generate new life. It is an endless, ceaseless loop. The mother gives birth, consumes the offspring back into herself, and regenerates. Haumea marrying her descendants is the mythological expression of a closed-loop ecosystem.
She is the matrix from which all things emerge and the destination to which all things must return to be reborn. That is brilliant. It completely removes the human morality from the equation and replaces it with pure ecological reality.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about dirt, about the paved streets and the real estate that we blindly walk over every day. But by exploring the cosmology of Papahānaumoku and the texts surrounding her, we've navigated into a universe where the ground beneath our feet is an ancient, living, grieving, and endlessly regenerating family member.
She is the foundation that birthed the islands.
The mother who nourishes the taro, and the elder sibling to humanity itself.
It's a worldview that entirely dismantles the hierarchy of humans sitting above nature, placing us instead in a complex horizontal web of mutual obligation and kinship.
There's one final thought from the source material that I want to leave you, the listener, to mull over. It's a minor detail in the text, but it carries incredible weight. The source explicitly states that unlike a human elder, the Earth Mother does not age and retire.
She doesn't just fade away.
No. She doesn't just sit in the background growing old while the next generation takes over. She transforms. She continually re-enters her own story. I want you to consider what it means to step outside tomorrow and realize that the ground you are walking on isn't a passive aging rock. It is an entity actively participating in an ancient, unending loop of consuming, renewing, and re-entering the narrative of the world right beneath your shoes.
It is the active breathing foundation of everything.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. We'll catch you next time.